If you are looking for a video to win your fantasy drafts, this is the video for you because we're going over the very best picks in each of the first 12 rounds of your fantasy draft. We got a bunch of wide receivers, a bunch of running backs, and a couple quarterbacks and tight ends mixed in for you. So if you follow this recipe, you might end up with a league winner. And for today's video, we are going off Sleeper's half PPR rankings, which has CeeDee Lamb at the 106, who is Ty's favorite pick. If you're watching over on YouTube, players on the right are going to be Ty's. You see his projection below. I got the guys on the left. My favorite pick is the 112 currently in the first round, Nico Collins. Ty, why do you like CeeDee Lamb even though he's already going top 6 picks in the draft?
Just because I feel like the top 6 or maybe 7, if you make that argument, the top 6 or 7 guys have like true number 1 overall player potential. And I think just because CeeDee Lamb finds himself at the bottom of this tier is ultimately the reason why I went with CeeDee Lamb. And I don't want to constantly refer to the best ball streets, but that is kind of the most accurate and up-to-date ADP that you can also refer to. CeeDee Lamb's a top 4 pick consistently. And he's going to, in my opinion, he's going to eventually overtake Justin Jefferson as the wide receiver 2. So you're getting CeeDee Lamb as a wide receiver 4 on Sleeper's half PPR draft board as well. So I think all signs, I don't really even need to talk about like why CeeDee Lamb can finish as the top overall player. We've seen it happen before. Everyone knows it can happen again.
Definitely. And I agree with that. And that's my same logic for Nico Collins going at the 112 is I agree. I think there's that top tier. And for me, if I'm looking at another player in the, in that next tier that could break into that top tier, it's really for me between Puka and Nico Collins, and Nico ends up going last pick of the first round. So that's a big reason for me. There's a couple guys in the second round that I also think can break into that, and we'll talk about them in a second. But yeah, anything you want to add on Nico, or are you kind of in agreement of, hey, he's one of the best players that next year?
No, I'll be honest. If you didn't choose Nico, he would have been my pick. So honestly, like I'm a happy camper here because we're talking about my 2 top preferences here.
For sure. And we are going to be talking best picks today, worst picks tomorrow. And we have 3 podcasts coming up each week after that. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, following along, turning on those notifications because you don't want to miss any fantasy football content. But let's get to the second round, Ty, because people don't want to hear us blab. They want to know who our picks are. And we went 2 running backs here. So, hey, if you're drafting like this and you can go wide receiver running back, I mean, it would be hard to get CD and Christian McCaffrey, but hey, you never know.
Never know.
Christian McCaffrey, I'll admit, for me, it was between Devon Achane and Christian McCaffrey. Those were the 2 I went back and forth with. Personally, I went Achane just because his ADP is the 203 and the CMC is the 201. I have them extremely close to my rankings. I have a CMC, admittedly, a little bit higher. Brian Thomas Jr., who goes at the 202, was also in that mix for me. So I think all 3 of those first guys were there. Achane, I have him as my running back 4. I think he has the top 3 upside. We saw it with Tua last season. He was unreal, averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. You saw it in his rookie season. He had 100 carries in his rookie season and 800 yards rushing. That is just mind-blowing. So obviously we're not expecting that efficiency again, but we know the upside. We know the PPR upside. That's why I went with Achane, and I would assume it's a lot of the same reason that you went with Christian McCaffrey.
Very much so. I think the best way to sum it up is that these would be the 2 guys that I shouldn't even say that we would bet going into the season. These guys should be first-round draft picks right now. And for whatever the reason they are not, you can come up with whatever the reason is. But you and I would both say that like these guys have at the minimum top 3 upside. I like my projection for Christian McCaffrey is the overall running back 1. That's in the range of outcomes for Devon Achane as well. In similar situation, had you not taken Achane and you took McCaffrey, I would have taken Achane then, because again, I think both guys should be first round picks. And if you can walk away in your draft with a Nico Collins and Achane and Nico Collins, Christian McCaffrey, you're walking away with 2 guys that should be first round picks in our books.
Yeah, and that's really, I mean, the only reason people are discounting is injuries, right? CMC obviously last season, Achane a smaller back injury risk. which I understand a little more, right? We're talking about home leagues and not best ball. However, for us, especially in the second round, I screw the injury risk. I mean, the upside these guys have, the fact that you can get the top 3 wide receiver and top 3 running back, after the first 2 rounds, that's a pretty big deal. That's something that we really, really value. Getting into the third round, I struggled admittedly with the third round. I know it was probably easy for you because you are a avid Chase Brown believer, and I don't know if I blame you too much. For me, there are so many different ways I can go, so I'll let you start, and you can just give us your little minute and a half love letter to Chase Brown.
The minute and a half may not be necessary because I feel like, again, if you're wanting me to explain why you should look at Chase Brown as one of the best picks, I should just tell you to go look at week 8 on last year, or really when he took over the backfield in week 6. Like, the dude was consistently a top 6 guy on a per game basis. The dude gets receiving work. He's in one of the highest volume offenses in the league. So it doesn't matter that he's in the same offense with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Like, Chase Brown is going to get his. And the offensive coordinator recently said as well, like, we're going to make Chase Brown like a staple, going to make him like a guy in this offense, as if that didn't already happen last year. So I'm not scared off by Taj Brooks. I think the Taj Brooks crowd, I hope that they get it straight that, like, he is a good handcuff, but he is not going to eat into Chase Brown's workload, because Chase Brown is he is the dude in that backfield. And besides T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, it's going to be Chase Brown with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, I've unfortunately starting to follow you with Chase Brown, because there's no news coming out that there's going to be any competition. They've said even we want to use him more in the passing game, which is just like, all right. I mean, is that, what's his name? Zach Taylor? Is that who the head coach is in Cincinnati? Okay. I don't know why I knew that was who it was. It sounded wrong in my head. But he's shown a willingness to use inefficient running backs as their workhorse. That was Joe Mixon's entire career in Cincinnati. And now, Chase Brown, not to worry about the inefficiency. The one player I do want to ask you about is Chase Brown goes to 304. Kyren Williams goes at the 303. Just got that new contract signed. Any temptation to switch to Kyren here? Or are you pretty... Nah, this is still Chase Brown pretty easily for me.
Yeah, absolutely not. I'm not moving off of Chase Brown. Kyren Williams, I've explained this so many times to people. The dude has been a volume sponge. And so the question that you need to ask yourself is Jarquez Hunter going to eat enough into that work? Because you got to call a spade a spade. Jarquez Hunter is something that this backfield doesn't have. And if he impresses on a small amount of volume, what's to say that second half of the year, Jarquez Hunter gets even more involved? It wouldn't surprise me if Kyron's still going to get at least 250 carries, but we're not going to get 300 like we did last year. I think we're going to be just barely getting to double-digit touchdowns. I just don't trust the offensive line when they get into the red zone to kind of help Kyron get into the end zone. So I'm probably nitpicking, because I think at this point, Kyron's not a bad pick, but I just think I know exactly what I'm getting with Chase Brown. I don't have a Jarquez Hunter risk like Kyron does.
For sure. I went with Garrett Wilson in this one. You can see over on the YouTube. I don't know why I always say on the YouTube, but he's my wide receiver 14. Ty, you have Chase Brown all the way up to running back 8. So that just should show the people, hey, Ty's in on this guy. He is very happy taking him there. Garrett Wilson goes up to 308. I think this is the year we finally see the true breakout. I understand last season, he was wide receiver 11.5 PPR. He was wide receiver 21 in points per game. So, that's kind of an inflated stat. I think this is the season we could see a DJ Moore-esque year from DJ Moore's first season to Justin Fields. A Garrett Wilson season before Devontae Adams came. He truly is the only pass catcher outside of really Breece Hall and probably Braylon Allen that you have to be concerned about in the Jets offense. I mean, Mason Taylor, they're already said, hey, he's going to start. Just got an ankle sprain. So it's like, and it's not like Mason Taylor was going to be this elite pass catcher right off the bat. He was just going to be better than Josh Reynolds and Allen Lazard. So he's got no one else. Justin Fields has to throw the ball. I don't care how bad Justin Fields struggles. I don't care how little he throws the ball. there is more than enough volume in this offense to get Garrett Wilson 10 targets when nobody else is going to demand targets. So that's really what it's coming from, is just this volume play. And if he can get 8 touchdowns, I think it's going to be a pretty good year for Garrett Wilson. So that's really where it comes from. Any pushback on Garrett Wilson? Or
I don't mind Garrett Wilson, because when you look at some of the receivers that go literally like right after Garrett Wilson, it's Marvin Harrison, Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, Rashee Rice, DJ Moore. Like, I'm not sure any of those guys have any better upside than what Garrett Wilson does
for those guys as well.
So I can't like totally dismiss the pick with Garrett Wilson. Like, if I was going to go receiver, I would probably lean like T Higgins. But at the same time, what's the difference? Like, if you want consistency, Garrett Wilson's your guy.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Moving on to the 4th round, get our first tight end on the board. Ty, you're talking a rookie here. So I think the sleeper crowd might be a little surprised to see that you're talking Omarion Hampton in the 4th round, but he's already going to the 403. So yeah, I mean, he's creeping up in the 3rd round. So I guess here's the 2-part: why Omarion Hampton? And let's say he gets up to the 312, goes ahead of Terry McLaurin, goes right around James Cook. Are you still comfortable taking him that high?
I am. I think you could look at it one way, in the sense that, like, the more days that go by that we don't hear anything about Najee Harris, that's like true. That should mean more for Omarion Hampton. I also think we've talked about before, this offense is going from J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards to Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris, if, you know, in a hypothetical healthy world, right? That's an upgrade. And the team committed to J.K. Dobbins. He was on pace for roughly 240 carries. He missed 4 games. So he just eclipsed over 200. But Omarion Hampton, in this kind of Greg Roman offense, he's going to get the rock. And I think he might just be the most talented weapon on this team. Like, yes, and that's saying a lot when you have Ladd McConkey on your team. But, like, if you're looking for a do-it-all guy, because Ladd is virtually just a slot-only guy, if you're looking for a do-it-all guy in this Chargers offense, it should be an improved run game, because you've got an offensive line that's building continuity going into year 2 under Jim Harbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know why we shouldn't be more in on Omarion Hampton. And I think right now it's kind of the sweet spot. Like, before the price gets even more expensive, like, we should be kind of investing in Hampton right now.
Yeah, because usually the reason you start Najee right away is he's going to be a little more acquainted with the system, with the speed of the game. But like you said, if we're going to continue pushing his date of arrival to camp, it's like Omarion Hampton's going to be at the same level already. And then you add the fact that he, you know, was a top 20 pick. The fact that, you know, he's got to have more juice than Najee Harris does. The Chargers were tied for 10th last year in rush attempts. So with what you, like you said, Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. So yeah, I don't know. It feels like they're going to keep running the ball, and that's probably just going to go up.
I was just going to say, to just kind of wrap it up, like, obviously people are more confident taking James Cook and Breece Hall ahead of Omarion Hampton, just because, again, those 2 guys go ahead of him. Now I have to ask, like, what is the question mark then on Omarion Hampton? Because I can point out the question marks with Breece Hall. I can point out the question marks with James Cook. What is the concern? What is the worry about Omarion Hampton? If it is the Najee Harris thing, I think you take advantage of it, because with how silent it is about Najee Harris over in LA, like, I feel like Omarion Hampton should be going ahead of those guys, because the odds of him being the guy, having a full workload, being a workhorse, if you want to call him that, keeps going up day by day by day, because it's no one else. It's not Kamani Vidal. It's not Hassan Haskins. Like, it's Omarion Hampton's backfield.
For sure. I mean, it really, like, when we're talking against James Cook, Brees Hall, I mean, even getting up towards Kyron Williams, at that point, it's just how much do you believe in Marion Hampton, right? Because if you're a true believer, it's looking like he's going to get that opportunity. So I'm not there yet. I'm not saying I'm there yet. I'm just saying that if you called your shot, like, it's not a bad pick as long as you think that's what's going to happen. I went with George Kittle here, tight end 3. I noticed when we were going over my rankings, I do have him closer to Hawkinson and Sam Laporta than I do the other two. However, I think the upside for Kittle is so much greater than those 3. I think the upside is comparable to where McBride and Bowers are going, and he's going a good 2 rounds later than those guys. So, or I guess round and a half later than Trey McBride, almost 2 rounds later than Brock Bowers. So the fact that you can get that same kind of upside in the 4th round and a true difference maker on an offense where every pass catcher seems like they're banged up, it just feels like a no duh. And George Kittle, kind of the knock on him earlier was, I mean, it's always been he can't stay fully healthy, which is the way he plays the game. He's probably going to miss a couple of games. You have to be okay with that. But it was, hey, he can rack up yards per catch. He's just not scoring touchdowns. And all of a sudden, Brock Purdy comes, and this dude's just a touchdown monster. So he's really just like, I'm going to get you a ton of yards, and I'm going to score touchdowns. And I don't need a ton of volume to do it all. So he's probably the perfect guy to have at tight end. I know in my best ball drafts, I'm targeting George Kittle all the time. Lucas has said, I can't stop taking George Kittle. Ty, I know you're a George Kittle guy yourself. So yeah, this is one that for me, I feel pretty good if I've got like a running back, 2 wide receivers here. And I know, hey, George Kittle's on the board. I don't have to feel any guilt taking him here.
Yeah. Well, and you look at some of the other pass catchers that go in the 4th round here. It's the same guys that we mentioned just a little bit ago with Garrett Wilson, where it's like, I don't know what kind of upside those guys give me versus George Kittle that can be like top 5 guy at worst on a per game basis. The guy he showed last year, he can be the tight end 1 on a per game basis.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that's a positional advantage, but it has to count for something that he can be the top guy at his position.
For sure. Moving on to the 5th round, we got 2 more wide receivers. We're in the great state of Pennsylvania for this one, Ty. You went DK Metcalf with Pittsburgh Steelers, and I went Devonta Smith on the Philadelphia Eagles. DK was a guy I had heavily considered taking here. I've really been rising on DK, and every single report out at camp makes me think maybe I should just be a little bit higher, because every report is the Rodgers-Metcalf connection is heating up. And if we can have that little bit of Rodgers synergy with his wide receiver 1 in DK Metcalf, we could be in for a heck of a year. So people know, right, DK is a pretty good player. Is it within the range of outcomes that he returns to wide receiver 1 status this season? Do you see that in his range of outcomes, or where do you think the ceiling lies for DK Metcalf?
I think it's more likely that he kind of finishes somewhere between this like 14 to 20 range than being a top 12 guy. Just because I don't know how productive, efficient, whatever buzzword you want to use for this Pittsburgh offense. Like, it sounds like they're pumping the brakes a bit on the running game just because of Caleb Johnson's ability to not get used to pass protection, which I think is kind of to be expected for a rookie here. So I think, again, there is the possibility. I ultimately, what's going to make the difference for DK is going to be the scoring. If we get 8 or more touchdowns, I feel pretty confident that we're going to be closer to 12 than to 20. But if we're 7 or lower, it's going to be closer to 20. And I think in some weird way, this year is kind of the one year where I feel like DK has a safe enough floor versus some of the other years in Seattle where he was known as the deep ball guy, as the deep threat. The performances were so inconsistent that that's what caused him to never really be a guy that you could fully rely on. I think this year we have that now finally, that because you do have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback and literally no one else. Like, I will not entertain any Jonnu Smith conversations about this one. Like, it's DK Metcalf. So I'm expecting him to get some volume here, and not so up and down performances like we were getting in Seattle.
For sure. DK goes at the 501. He's the wide receiver 23 off the board. So when you say, I think he finishes in that 14 to 20 range, you're saying, I believe he's returning on ADP, even if I don't think he has that true wide receiver one upside, which honestly, most wide receivers in those range don't. That's why they're going later. Devonta Smith is another guy like that. I saw a tweet, Devonta Smith currently going at the 506. Why draft Devonta Smith when you could draft Jameson Williams or Travis Hunter or Jalen Waddle or Calvin Ridley? And hopefully this season they can be Devonta Smith. Because Devonta Smith has already finished as a wide receiver 9. Devonta Smith was already a top 15 guy in points per game last year. That's what you're hoping all these other players are going to be. And Devonta Smith is already that. It's just he's an unsexy player. He's a guy we should, or did we have him on that episode? If not, we should have. Because
I feel like somebody did.
I thought Lucas might have. Because maybe, I don't remember if it was that episode or another episode, but he always performs. He always does well, and it feels like, but he's not going to because of the lack of volume. He was a wide receiver 17 in points per game last year. He outscored Ladd McConkey in points per game. He outscored Jameson Williams in points per game. He outscored JSN, Garrett Wilson, Cortland Sutton in points per game. So he did it last season where Jalen Hurts threw the least amount he's ever thrown. So I just don't understand why he couldn't do it again this year. And that was, A.J. Brown was still wide receiver 12 in points per game at the same time. So there's definitely room for growth. I understand it's not like, he's going to be the top 5 wide receiver, but nobody really is at this point.
No, that's a very good point. And because it was Lucas that talked about Devonta on the unsexy picks video. If you think this Philly offense can still be one of the top units in the league, you should be drafting Devonta Smith. Or if you think that Saquon Barkley can't repeat what he did last year, you should be drafting Devonta Smith. He doesn't need a ton of volume. Just looking at the last 3 years, he finished as wide receiver 9 in 2022 on 136 targets. Year after that, 112 targets, just over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns, wide receiver 19. If you get that out of Devonta Smith for going in the 5th round, it's a win. It's a win. You're not asking him to be a top 15 guy. If he gives it to you, awesome. It's an added bonus. You're just asking him to be better than some of the guys that go ahead of him. And I hate to just keep kind of making fun or poking at this range of receivers that go ahead of both of these guys, of Devontae Adams and Rashee Rice and DJ Moore. And we've sung the praises of Devontae Adams. I'm just starting to get more and more concerned about the Stafford back injury. Mm-hmm. So that's why I throw him in there. But Mike Evans and Terry McLaurin, Devonta and DK Metcalf has as much upside, if not more, than those guys. And for whatever reason, they're going later. So we are fine passing up on receivers kind of through round 3 and 4 to take one of these guys, because again, that's where our vote of confidence is.
Yeah, definitely is. And you notice our rankings, they are on our draft guide, which you can find at fellowsdraftguide.com. It is linked below in the bio. So if you want to check it out, we think it's worth it. That's why we put it out there. Into the 6th round, we got 2 guys that, we're both fond of in our own way, because they do have kind of this exciting upside to them. Jalen Waddle, I actually have higher than Devonta Smith right now. George Pickens, you have as a wide receiver 29. Both go, obviously, in the 6th round. Jalen Waddle goes at the 608. George Pickens goes at the 601. Ty, you are just walking the line, dude, of
I know.
601, 501, 403. You are, I want the best of the best in this. And I don't know if I blame you. George Pickens, I know, obviously coming over to Dallas, there's just so much stuff around George Pickens all the time. And now you put him in a market like Dallas, and he's going to be so good. He can't do anything because of CD. What is the truth about George Pickens? What do the people need to realize about George Pickens for this year?
That we shouldn't be getting the same inconsistencies that we were getting in Pittsburgh now that he's in Dallas. Not saying that Pickens is automatically going to be a top 25 guy. But the thing is, like, he has CeeDee Lamb now. And in CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens are not the same receiver. And what I mean by that is they're not going to be like, banging heads or, fighting each other for targets. Like, there's enough balls to go around here to feed CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. It would not surprise me. I know I said this on a live stream recently. It wouldn't surprise me if CeeDee Lamb finishes closer to like 170 targets and Pickens is closer to like 130. Like, that's enough for both of these guys. George Pickens is on the outside. CeeDee Lamb's going to be in the slot. Both can play in 2 wide receiver sets. So it's not like Pickens is going to be leaving the field at any point. You look at the run game in Dallas, kind of similar to last year, if not worse. Like, Rico Dowdle I'll give him this. I'll give him his credit. He was good with what he had in front of him. That was not an easy situation, and he made the most of it. And now the running backs are worse here. So this team is still going to be throwing the ball a ton. You see my projection wide receiver 29. I can tell you, like, with 1,000% certainty and confidence, that's going to be going up, and that's probably going to be closer to 24, if not even to 20, because, again, that's how much usage I think George Pickens will get this year. And I'll just say this real quick, too. I know I talked about CeeDee Lamb as my first-round pick, George Pickens now in the 6th. I'm not saying take both of them in your draft, but I think if you miss out on CeeDee Lamb, you can fall back on George Pickens. Or if you take CeeDee Lamb, then obviously you don't need to take Pickens. But I've got confidence in these Dallas wide receivers that they can produce regardless of where they go in drafts.
Yeah, this is Waddle, my second Dolphin. You talked about McCaffrey and Kittle already. Spoiler, there's another 49er coming down the road. One big thing we're doing is betting on players who are on underperforming teams from last year. Miami, a letdown season. 49ers, a letdown season. Dallas, a letdown season after Dak got hurt. Because these players are still just as talented. They're still going to be in the spot to perform. And that just doesn't go away just because a guy was hurt or a situation changed. Jalen Waddle, same thing. I know it's been 2 down years. I know it's been rough. However, Jonnu Smith gone. Tyreek Hill has telling them we need to use Jalen Wright instead of Devon Achane, making comments. Mike McDaniel's making comments about him. Tua's making comments about him. Devon Achane's quote tweeting him. So there's enough going on with him that I think Jalen Waddle has the upside there that, we should be trusting in him a little bit more. And at this price range, I like the upside, right? I know end of the 6th round, the 608. It's not killer if he, is an average wide receiver, because I think he's going to return on ADP as long as Tua is healthy. If Tua gets hurt, obviously it screws up the whole thing. That's the same with, most quarterbacks. If Dak gets hurt, it screws it up for Pickens and CeeDee. So that's just the way we're going to look at it. All right, before rounds 7 through 12, we're going to take a quick break and hear from our friends over at Underdog Fantasy.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, home of Best Ball Mania 6. There are $15 million in prizes up for grabs, with $2 million going to first place and another $1 million going to second place. Entering is super easy. You join a draft with 11 other people, select your team, and Underdog will automatically generate your highest scoring lineup each week. Essentially, you get all the fun of drafting with zero stress of making the wrong decision on who to start. Underdog hosts a variety of other contests as well, ranging from $3 entries to $500 entries, so there's something for everybody's pocketbook. If you're not on Underdog yet, use the code FELLAS when you sign up, because they'll give you up to $1,000 in bonus credits to play with, and we'll give you our 2025 draft guide for free. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show.
We are back, and we have 6 more rounds for you. I'll be honest, we're going to clip through a couple of these guys, because another spoiler, we have the same guys in a couple rounds coming up, because it gets a little grosser in these rounds, and we'll admit it. Not round 7 yet. Calvin Ridley, Rome Odunze, we both have our reasons for liking him. I don't think we can call it super gross yet, but we are just putting the disclaimer out there. This is the parental warning of it's going to get gross and a little nasty, especially round 12. We're kind of scraping out of the bucket there, but Ty, Rome Odunze, he's been your guy all off season. Anything you want to add? We've talked about him a ton. So anything you want to add on telling the people this is why you go with Rome?
DJ Moore is a 4th-round pick, and Rome Odunze is a 7th-round pick. And Rome Odunze can be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. I think that's the best way that I can put it. There's not a whole lot that I want to necessarily draw from last year that can kind of give a positive outlook for Rome Odunze. But at the same time, I can point out he's a sophomore wide receiver who is a top 10 pick who is playing the most difficult position and actually played it really, really well last year, despite the ball going to DJ Moore and Keenan Allen more often. So, yes, this team added some more weapons with Luther Burden and Colson Loveland. I still see a world where, honestly, Rome Odunze can be the wide receiver 1, and a guy that I'm going to talk about in a little bit can be like number 3, maybe even number 2 if things fall a certain way.
Ooh, getting hot out there. But yeah, you look at the Bears last year, threw 566 times. Rome had over 100 targets, even with the target competition you mentioned. With Ben Johnson this year, it feels like he wants to throw the ball even more. So it's really hard to argue, especially looking at Rome and the fact that DJ Moore is taking snaps out of the backfield in the red zone. That just should tell you all you need to know about the Bears rushing attack. Sounds like Roshan Johnson isn't even getting RB2 snaps anymore. It's all going to Kyle Monungai. So
sorry, Lucas.
It could be scary hours for the Bears rushing attack. And if that's the case, Rome Odunze is going to see a lot of volume. Speaking of a guy who's going to see a lot of volume, Calvin Ridley of the Tennessee Titans. He's my wide receiver 28 currently. Right now, he is going at the 705. Rome Odunze, Ty, good job. Goes at the 707. Didn't take the first pick of the 7th round, which would have been Calvin Ridley's teammate, Tony Pollard. But everything coming out of camp has been very positive about Cam Ward's development. We know that Calvin Ridley's truly the only pass catching option in this offense that's really worth its salt. They paid him that way too, so they're going to use him. So if we have even a slight upgrade over what we saw last year from the Tennessee quarterback room, which should not be hard to do, I think we could see a pretty decent season from Calvin Ridley, who last year, where did Calvin Ridley finish? He was the wide receiver. He was a top 25 guy, right?
He was 28.
Yeah, so could see definitely an improvement off that. Would be obviously beating ADP, even if he just finished at where he was at last season. In round 8, just like I promised, we got the same guy. So, Ty, why don't you kick it off? Why Stephon Diggs here? Why do we like him? Coming off an ACL tear. He's old.
He's healthy.
Yes.
He's healthy. That's the thing that you need to know about Stephon Diggs, is that he's healthy. Like obviously there's going to be a bit of a ramp up period, but the beauty of Stephon Diggs is that's baked into his cost right now. It would be a completely different story if Diggs was going in the sixth round or even higher than that. I would never really understand that, but I also understand the pessimism with a New England offense that has very, very underachieved over the last 2-3 years. It's kind of a new day in New England. Okay. Obviously the coaching change with Mike Vrabel coming in, Josh McDaniels now being the play caller, but ultimately what sells Stephon Diggs for me here in the 8th is the quarterback that he's attached to. Yes, going from Josh Allen and CJ Stroud now to Drake may sound like it's a bit of a step down kind of from Josh Allen to CJ Stroud to Drake May, but this is maybe another way of me showing that I've got confidence that Drake May can take a step forward this year and that he can actually be a very productive quarterback. And he's got like a true number 1 guy here, right? Like Diggs is kind of notorious for being number 1 options. Obviously in Houston, bit of a different story because you had Nico Collins, but when Stephon Diggs got to Buffalo, Diggs was the guy. So it would not surprise me if Diggs steps up and is the number 1 guy here in New England, despite what seems to be this ever-revolving door of receivers between Kyle Williams and Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte and Mac Hollins. Like, I feel like if there's one consistent in that wide receiver room, it's going to be Stephon Diggs. And again, did we mention that he's healthy? Yeah. Did we say that? So I really, there's I don't want to say there's nothing wrong with Diggs here in the 8th round, but he's the guy with the least amount of question marks compared to a lot of other guys that go around him.
Yeah, I mean, our guy Deepak at Sports MD Analysis over on Twitter, always a great follow. Stephon Diggs trending heavily towards playing week 1 without a snap count. Wide receivers average a 4-game ramp up target to ramp up target volume by week 5. Project hit 90% of pre-injury form. In the 8th round, he's going to be your wide receiver 4, maybe at worst wide receiver 3, maybe your wide receiver 5 at best, right? So you can live with that ramp up period. And if you remember last season, weeks 1 through 8, Stephon Diggs was the wide receiver 10. Stephon Diggs was 6th in targets last season before he got injured. So, like, it's not like he completely fell off. He was still a top 12 wide receiver. He was a top 10 wide receiver the season before, and then he was a top 5 wide receiver for the 3 seasons before that in Buffalo. This guy is a good football player. And I think we're just forgetting about that because of where he's being, of the jersey. He's in his 3rd jersey in 3 years. He's coming off the injury. If he's healthy, he's going to be pretty stinking good for fantasy football. This next guy, Ty, we hope he's healthy. Please be healthy, Ricky. Please be healthy. You know why we want him to be healthy? Because then he'd be the only healthy guy in this entire wide receiver room for San Francisco. Maybe on the entire team now that Isaac Arendo's already hurt. CMC and George Kittle don't have the greatest track record of health.
Juwan Jennings.
Juwan Jennings got the calf. Brandon Ayuk coming off the ACL, not Achilles, ACL. Why are we believing in Ricky this year, Ty? I mean, I have him at 47, you have him at 46, so it's not like we're overly in on Ricky. But I feel like that's going to start coming up as we get further into camp, or as we hear more injury news on the other 2 wide receivers in this offense.
So if you've been keeping track, Ricky is the 6th receiver that I've talked about here. And obviously you've been jokingly saying, like, I've been taking guys like right on the edge here of like the 501 and 601 and all that stuff. But if there's a world where you can get potentially the San Francisco 49ers wide receiver 1 as your wide receiver 4, as your wide receiver 5, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Honestly, like, there is nothing attached to Ricky Pearsall that says like he has to produce for you. And I think it's the cherry on top, like you had mentioned, when you look at the team around him. You got Juwan Jennings that re-aggravated the calf injury. You have Brandon Ayuk that shouldn't really be back for a long time still. There's still no timetable for his return.
Yep.
So in this offense, it's Christian McCaffrey, it's George Kittle, Ricky Pearsall. Like, this one is pretty straightforward. I see this one very much as like a low risk, high reward pick, because again, you can take Ricky to be your wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5. You don't need to play him every week. But if you can get the upside that he can be a top 35 guy at the worst, it's an automatic value. You automatically win the 9th round of your drafts because you're getting a guy that's returning value, if not giving more than that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about our guy Deepak again at Sports MD Analysis. Great follow on Twitter. Gonna shout him out one more time, but he's talking about Juwan Jennings. He's supposed to miss 4 to 6 weeks from when he, originally got hurt. Which means week 1 is in play. That's not exactly what you want to hear if you're the 49ers. It's in play with a high re-injury risk. Ricky Pearsall, now that he's out the pup, as long as he's healthy rest of camp, there is limited to no re-injury risk. And Brandon Ayuk, they're suspecting he might start on the PUP list, on the pup list, targeting a late October return, with then a 6-game ramp-up period after that, which means he might not even be good to go till week 12. So yeah, that's the reason we're on Ricky. Is we know he's talented. We know they believe in him. They took him as a first-round pick last year. And now if he's going to get the opportunity, it's like, why are we not saying yes here in the 9th round? Because like you said, the fact that he could be then your wide receiver 4, man, that's pretty nice. That is pretty nice. Moving on to the 10th round. People are going to look at this and they might actually think, Oh, Ty's talking about Jordan Mason. Cameron's got Colston Loveland, but no, Ty is not the Jordan Mason guy here. Ty is talking about Colston Loveland. You forecasted a little bit. This is our fourth set of teammates so far.
Yeah.
Romadou saying Colston Loveland. So you can tell Bears another team we're betting on here. What is you hinted at some crazy upside for Colston Loveland, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, so I need to hear it.
Well, I sure, let me clarify. I don't think it's the most likely possibility, but there's a world where DJ Moore is just not really the DJ Moore that we have expected and seen in fantasy in terms of usage. And maybe with Colston Loveland here in the 10th, because I haven't talked about a tight end yet, so this is my tight end pick. But I do see this kind of target structure, I'll call it, right, in terms of who can be the top, who can be the next, and so on and so forth. I see it as relatively open. And some people, I feel like most drafters are seeing DJ Moore and they go, well, the name of DJ Moore, right? Like that's the most familiar name to them. Versus, in my opinion, I like the talent of Roma Dunze. I like the role that he should have in this Ben Johnson offense, even though like you can never really know what's coming from a Ben Johnson offense. But again, because things are so wide open, like Colston Loveland can like sneak in here and be a kind of relative unknown as a guy that way outperforms where he goes in drafts. And again, I see this offense as kind of wide open in terms of who's going to be getting the ball the most. I think it speaks volumes that the team could have gone elsewhere in the draft, but they said, nah, top 10 pick, Colston Loveland.
No, definitely. And like the draft capital has to matter. It does. I mean, the fact that they skipped Tyler Warren, who was seen as almost a consensus top tight end, went with Loveland here. Ben Johnson got his guy in his first draft as a head coach. You got to imagine they're going to use him. Jordan Mason, we've talked about a ton. I'm not going to talk about much more. It's the fact that we could have a guy pushing for double-digit rushing touchdowns that you're getting this late. That's really what it comes to. If Kevin O'Connell said it multiple times, it's going to be a 1A, 1B. Even if it's not the crazy amount of carries, like it's 160 carries, the fact he's going to be getting that goal line work is pretty huge. And obviously, Aaron Jones goes down, and the upside is absolutely tremendous for Jordan Mason.
I mean, there's an argument to be made that Jordan Mason is the most explosive runner in this backfield right now.
Yes.
And that's not to say that like we don't think Aaron Jones is washed or that it like,
yeah,
you do have to admit that like Aaron Jones is just another year older, and Jordan Mason coming off the year that he might be the most explosive guy. And so there may be games where we see more Jordan Mason than we do Aaron Jones.
For sure. In round 11, we got two quarterbacks. Ty, you talked about this a little bit in our doc, and it's really just all the quarterbacks here. It started at the 10:08. It was Caleb Williams getting into the 11th round. Then at the 11:01, Dak Prescott, Jordan Love at the 11:04, Justin Fields, 11:05, CJ Stroud, 11:09, and Drake May at the 11:12. It's just, if you're waiting on a quarterback, here's your spot to take it because you got a lot of good options. I went with Fields because he's my highest rated quarterback. We just talked about him in the last episode, so I'm not going to talk about him anymore, but that's why I went Fields here. Similar thought with Drake May, or is it just because he's the last one to go in this round?
That's a bit of it, but I also just think that like if you can walk away from your draft with Stephon Diggs and Drake May, and that's what I've been doing in my best ball drafts, that's what I've tried to do in mock drafts that we host every Monday night, by the way. So you should tune in for those. Like, I feel like that's such a cheap stack to get that can pay major dividends because they can both be, startable pieces at their position.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and if you count at home, fifth pair of teammates right there, Drake May and Stephon Diggs. And then finally, round 12, we told you we're scraping bottom of the barrel. And we didn't want to separate here. We both went Ray Davis, and it's really just for me. James Cook still isn't at practice. The fact that he scored that many touchdowns last year, for scoring 2 and 4 the 2 seasons before, feel like some of those are going to go to Ray Davis because I don't think Josh Allen's rushing for more than 15 this season. So just kind of pairing that all together, and we're talking about a guy who's going to the running back 40s, who as a handcuff has tremendous upside if James Cook were to get hurt. So for me, it's just all those factors coming together, because if you're taking a running back here and he falls on his face, that's typical going this late in draft. So that's just the psyche behind it for me.
Well, and it's not even that, like, if James Cook misses time.
Yeah.
The dude is holding in right now.
That's true.
And obviously the Kyron contract extension, I think it was Rap Sheet that said, like, that was kind of the domino that people were waiting on for James Cook and his contract. So maybe this can come back and nip us in the butt. But again, as a round 12 pick, with the possibility of being the guy in this Buffalo backfield, it's a very similar argument to what we were saying for, like, Devonta Smith.
Yeah.
If you think Buffalo is going to be one of the top offenses in the league, it shouldn't matter if Ray Davis is going to be the running back 2. Yeah. He can be the running back 1 if James Cook holds in. And honestly, the more time he misses in training camp, the better.
Yeah. I mean, and from every running back here on down, they're all handcuffs. So why wouldn't you take one of the top 5 handcuffs in the league? That's what it comes down to. And I mean, everybody around him is like, it's not much greater if you go look over on the sleeper big board. So Ray Davis goes at the 12-12, last pick of the 12th round. Well, that wraps it up for us today. We're going to come back tomorrow with the worst picks. We're going to tell you, I mean, just why we don't like it. Essentially, we're just going to go through Lucas's most recent redraft and just read you what not to do is essentially what we're going to do. But no, that one I think will be more discussion. We'll probably disagree with a couple because it's a lot more fun to call someone the best pick than it is to call them the worst pick. So that tomorrow's episode should be interesting. Remember to hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications, because we have 3 episodes coming every single week for the rest of the season. I am at Camelot FFF on the X, Tyler_Plath for Tyler. We have Fantasy Football Fellows on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Fantasy Football Fellows Shorts on YouTube, the FFLs on Instagram, FFLs on the X. So make sure you give us a follow over there for all of our socials, and we will see you tomorrow. Deuces.